Kenny here doesn't always like to come on command. Now, the guardians have been using the word come. One of the things I found out is if a dog has been, we've been trying to get a dog to respond to a specific command word for a while and it hasn't responded to it, it's easier and faster to rebrand it. So in this practice session, we're going to use the word here instead of come. All right, so a little bit of the science of the hand. The flatter your hand is, the more it's for the dog. The more closed the hand, the less for the dog. So when I give the dog, I want to have my palm facing the ceiling, open, slightly cupped. Now, as I go lower, I'm going to tilt my fingers to prevent the dog from seeing in my hand. Because later on, we're going to be able to use this hand motion without having a treat, and the dog will still come to us. So what we do is I want to start out with a 90-degree bend. Now, I'm just showing it sideways so you can see it. I'm going to be extending the treat towards the dog. But if I start up here or down here too low, it's difficult to go up and down, and going up and down helps. So I'm going to say the command word one time. When the dog comes to me, I'm going to raise it over the dog's head to put it into a sit. As soon as it sits, I lower it. So all it has to do is tilt its head down and lick the treat off my hand. When it does, I'm going to scratch under the chin and say the word here simultaneously. This combines the action with the reward with the command word. Now, if the dog doesn't sit, then I raise it over, if it doesn't come to me, I say here and it doesn't even look, then I make a kissing sound to get the dog to look at me. As soon as it looks at me, I start lowering it. Now, if she paws or jumps up like Annie likes to do, as soon as she does, I bend my elbow away as my way of saying no. That needs to happen immediately. If you wait for her to make contact, you're too late. So you want to watch. As soon as her paw leaves the ground is when you bend away. And if your timing is precise, after a while she'll understand, as soon as I lift my paws up, that means I'm not getting the treat for sure. If I keep 4 on the floor, I get the treat right away. All right, so what we're going to do when you're doing this, you want to have a triangle, so you have at least, or you want to have at least 3 people if you're preferable. You can do it with 2 people, but after a while the dog starts pogoing back and forth. And if the dog comes to you and you didn't call it, and it comes and sits, you can reward it with the sit or the pet, but I wouldn't give it the treat. Now, if she comes to me and I give her the treat for coming, or for here, and then somebody else calls and she stays here because she knows I have a treat, I'm going to cross my arms like this, look up to the side like a bad Mexican soap opera actor, and remain completely still. She likes Mexican soap operas, what can I say? So I want to become uninteresting. So I'm not going to move. If she paws at me, I'm not going to respond at all. And I'm going to let the other person make the kissing sound. And once she looks, she's going to lower it. Here. After a while, after a while, she's going to sit on a command, and then you don't have to raise it up anymore. All right, so when you start doing this, we're going to demonstrate it a little bit, and then I'm going to come back and we're going to talk about the instructions and how we can make this more, how we can facilitate this doing a real world situation. Here. Here. Your turn. Hold your hand out flat. Say here. Here.
Here.
Now, one thing, if you want to turn it back to me real quick, one thing I did when the dog didn't sit down, he kind of went like this. So when the dog doesn't sit, we go over its head to put him into the sit, and then or we lower it to get him to come. Now, I wait for them to be in the position I want them to be in before I raise it up. I don't want to start raising up when the dog's a couple feet away because that's where it'll sit. Here. Here. Your turn.
Here. Here.
So you see she's already starting to respond pretty quickly. Here. Here. And you notice the energy is a lot more mellow. At first, we actually had to film this a second time. So my apprentice called me, Tara, and it stopped the videotaping, so we're doing this a second time. All right, so basically this is the premise for the hand motions and to get the dog to come to you. Now, basically what we want to do is we want to practice this, again, preferably with 3 people, and I would put 1 person in charge. That person gets to say who gets going to call the dog next, because we don't want to have the dog calling or having multiple people call the dog at the same time. So what we're going to do is we're going to start out in a triangle or whatever shape, depending on how many people we have, in a small area where we're about 10 feet apart and the dog has a direct path to each person. Once the dog starts coming consistently and we don't have to raise our hand anymore and it comes on the first call, then we want to make it more challenging by increasing the size of this triangle or whatever the shape is. So I'd have 1 person maybe go into the living room and they're sitting at the table there. So it's still in line of sight, but it's just a couple feet away. And eventually we're going to have everybody that's participating in different parts of the house beyond line of sight, and the dog has got to listen and then go find that person and get a reward. This creates a situation where every time I come to the person, something good happens, so I'm more inclined to do it in the future. Now that's inside the house. You do not have a soft mouth, let me tell you. So the next step is to go outside. Now, it's Nebraska. It's not really nice this time of the year. So when we have a nice day, this is a great day to practice. But if we need to, we're going to bundle up and go out there. One thing I didn't mention, I mentioned in the other video, but when it comes to training, you want to keep training sessions to 1 to 2 minutes. After 2 minutes, you'll start getting more failures, and you start getting frustrated. Hey, that hurts. And then the dog gets frustrated and then has a negative remembrance of whatever it is. So we want to make sure it's always end on a positive, and 1 to 2 minutes is the ideal training duration. So I usually would give each person about 5 to 7 treats and then go as long as they're there. So it's going to be pretty quick. Now, once we get to the point where we're going outside, there's a lot of distractions. That's okay. And so if we continue to, at that great distance or beyond line of sight, the dog's going to be distracted. So what we want to do is basically collapse back to the 10 feet triangle or whatever shape it is and practice it at that until the dog's got to bounce. It's coming consistently. You're biting my hand. That's why you're not getting it right now. Then once we get to that point where the dog comes consistently, then the next step is to have everybody take 2 or 3 steps backwards, and we on the next practice round, the next 5 or 7 treats, and we practice that again. And then eventually, the next time we practice, we're going to take another step back. So make sure it's progressive and very gradual. So each time we're only 1 or 2 feet further away from each other. And eventually, if we can, if we have this room in our backyard, we're going to be around the side of the house or behind a tree so the dog is beyond our line of sight. And what you'll see is the dog bouncing over happily to whoever calls them, because that means they're going to get a reward. So if you get to the point where you go from like 15 feet away to 20 feet away and the dog stops coming, well, then we might want to back up and go from 15 feet away to 17 feet away. Always back up a step when the dog fails to put the dog in a position to succeed, make it a little bit easier, help them practice it. And then once they have fulfilled or mastered that distance or that level of challenge, degree of difficulty, then we're going to make it a little bit more challenging, a little bit more challenging. I'd like to see the Guardians practicing this a minimum of 1 time a day, but I'd like to see it a couple of times a day. Now, we have the holidays coming around, so if we have any relatives or friends that stop by, get your friends involved. People love interacting with dogs. It's a great way for your dog to learn, not only are other people good to approach, but if I approach them in a polite way and sit, they're going to reward me. If we have a dog that likes to jump up, this is a great way to help them learn demand, to sit for attention rather than jumping up or pawing, which is what we have here with Annie. So this is how we can teach our dog to reliably come on command.